The scream cut through the elegant restaurant like a knife through silk. Every conversation stopped. Every fork froze midair. Every head turned toward the private booth in the back corner where the most feared man in Chicago sat utterly helpless, his 3-year-old son thrashing in his arms like a wild animal caught in a trap. Emma Richardson's hands trembled as she balanced a tray of drinks. She'd been a waitress at Marcello's for 8 months, long enough to recognize the dangerous men who occupied that booth every Tuesday evening. Long enough to know that you didn't stare, didn't ask questions, didn't get involved. But that sound, that desperate soul-crushing wail of a child in pain, it bypassed every survival instinct she'd developed since her father's death. "Someone should do something," whispered Maria, the hostess, her face pale. "That poor baby has been screaming for 20 minutes. Emma watched as a man built like a mountain approached the booth, his hand moving toward the crying child. In an instant, 6 other men stood, hands inside their jackets where she knew guns waited. The mountain man stepped back, palms raised. The child's father, Lorenzo Caruso, though Emma only knew him as the man in booth 7 who tips in $100 bills and never smiles, looked like he was being torn apart from the inside. His dark eyes were wild with desperation, his expensive suit rumpled, his normally perfect hair disheveled. Blood streaked his white collar where the little boy's fingernails had scratched him. "Matteo, please." Lorenzo's voice cracked, and Emma's heart cracked with it. "Please, son, tell Papa what's wrong." But the child couldn't answer. Or wouldn't. He just screamed and screamed, his little face red and swollen with tears, his body rigid with whatever pain or fear consumed him. Emma didn't make a conscious decision. Her feet simply moved. "Emma, no!" Maria hissed, grabbing at her arm. "Are you insane? You can't—" But Emma was already weaving through tables, past the wall of bodyguards who tensed as she approached. She registered their weapons, their hostile stares, the way they formed a barrier between their boss and the rest of the world. She stopped 3 feet from the booth. 20 guns were probably pointed at her back. Lorenzo Caruso's eyes snapped to her face, and for a moment she forgot how to breathe. She'd never been this close to him before, had never seen the flecks of gold in those dark brown eyes, the sharp angle of his jaw, the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, had never seen such raw, devastating pain in another human being's face. "Sir," she said quietly, surprised her voice didn't shake, "I might be able to help. Get her out of here." Lorenzo's voice was granite, but his arms never loosened their protective hold on his son. "Now. He just needs a mom." The words fell from Emma's lips before she could stop them. The restaurant, already silent, somehow became even quieter. Lorenzo Caruso stared at her like she'd slapped him. "What did you say?" Emma swallowed hard. She'd crossed a line. She could see it in the faces of the bodyguards, in the dangerous stillness that had come over Lorenzo's body. But she'd already jumped off the cliff, might as well sprout wings on the way down. "My mother died when I was 6, she said, speaking directly to the little boy now, her voice soft and melodic. "I used to scream just like that, for hours. My father tried everything. Nothing worked. Until one day, his secretary, this woman named Ruth with the kindest smile, she sat down next to us in the hospital waiting room and started singing. Emma began to hum, a melody her own mother had sung to her a lifetime ago, an old Italian lullaby her nonna had taught her mother, passed down through generations. The child's screams faltered, hiccuped. His tear-stained face turned toward Emma, blue eyes wide and searching. "Stella, Stellina, la notte si avvicina," Emma sang softly, taking one small step closer. "La fiamma traballa, la mucca è nella stalla." Matteo's crying reduced to whimpers. His small body, which had been rigid with tension, began to relax against his father's chest. Emma kept singing, kept her eyes locked on the little boy's face, watched as recognition and something like hope flickered in those innocent eyes. Lorenzo Caruso hadn't moved, hadn't breathed. He stared at Emma like she was performing a miracle, like she'd reached into his chest and restarted his heart with her bare hands. When Emma finished the lullaby, Matteo had stopped crying completely. His thumb found its way to his mouth, his other hand clutched his father's shirt, and his eyes. those heartbreaking blue eyes, remained fixed on Emma's face. "My mama," the little boy whispered, the first words he'd spoken all evening. "She sing that." Emma's eyes burned with tears she couldn't shed. She looked at Lorenzo and saw the same emotion reflected in his face. Grief so deep it had no bottom, love so fierce it could break the world. "She had good taste," Emma said gently to Matteo. "It's a beautiful song." "You speak Italian," Lorenzo said, and it wasn't a question. His voice had changed, lost its hard edge, become something almost human. "My mother was Italian, from Napoli." Emma shrugged, acutely aware that she was still standing in front of the most dangerous man in Chicago, that his son was calm, but she might not be safe. "I don't speak it well, but I remember the songs." Lorenzo stood slowly, Matteo cradled against his chest. He was tall. Emma had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Up close, he was devastating, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with symmetry and everything to do with power, with presence, with the kind of magnetism that made people either worship or fear you. "What's your name?" "Emma. Emma Richardson." "Emma Richardson." He tested her name on his tongue like he was tasting wine. "You work here?" "Yes, sir. I'm a waitress." One of the bodyguards leaned in, whispered something in Lorenzo's ear. Lorenzo nodded once, never taking his eyes off Emma's face. "How much do you make a year, Emma Richardson?" The question threw her. That's personal." 30,000. 35 with tips." Lorenzo shifted Matteo to one arm with practiced ease, reached into his jacket with the other hand. Emma's heart jumped, but he pulled out a checkbook, not a gun. "I'll pay you 50,000 a month to work for me." Emma's brain short-circuited. "I'm sorry, what?" "My son." Lorenzo's hand moved to Matteo's back, rubbing gentle circles. "He hasn't stopped crying like this in 2 years. He doesn't sleep, doesn't talk most days. The doctors say trauma, grief, attachment disorder. We've tried 12 nannies. He screams until they leave." His eyes bored into Emma's. "You calmed him in 30 seconds. So I'm offering you $50,000 a month to be his nanny. Live in, full time." That's insane." "That's generous," Lorenzo corrected. "I can go higher if you need me to." Emma took a step back, her mind reeling. 50,000 a month, 600,000 a year. More money than her father had made in his entire life. Enough to pay off his medical debts, the loan sharks circling her apartment, the credit cards maxed out on funeral expenses and hospital bills. Enough to save her. But nothing was ever free, especially not from men like Lorenzo Caruso. "I can't," she said, and watched something flicker in his eyes. Disappointment? Surprise? I'm not qualified. I'm just a waitress. I don't know anything about being a nanny." "You knew how to calm my son when 20 armed men couldn't. That's the only qualification I need." "Mr. Caruso, Lorenzo." His voice softened impossibly. "If you're going to turn me down, at least call me by my name." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked at little Matteo, now drowsy against his father's shoulder, his thumb still in his mouth, his eyes starting to close. She thought about her studio apartment with its broken heater, the eviction notice on her door, the 3 jobs she worked just to stay afloat. She thought about her father, who'd died drowning in debt because the American healthcare system decided his life was worth less than the cost of treatment. And she thought about this beautiful, broken little boy who'd just lost his mother and needed someone, anyone, to show him that the world could still be kind. "I need to think about it," she whispered. Lorenzo nodded. He pulled a card from his wallet, held it out to her. "My private number. You have 24 hours to decide." Emma took the card with shaking fingers. The paper was heavy, expensive, embossed with a single name, Lorenzo Caruso. 24 hours, she repeated. "Emma." Lorenzo's voice stopped her as she turned to leave. "For what it's worth, thank you, for giving him a moment of peace. That's more than anyone's been able to do in a very long time." She wanted to say something profound, something that would ease the grief carved into his face. Instead, she just nodded and walked back through the restaurant on legs that didn't feel like her own. Maria grabbed her the moment she was behind the bar. "What the hell just happened?" "I have no idea," Emma breathed. But that was a lie. She knew exactly what had happened. Lorenzo Caruso had just offered her a way out of the darkness that had swallowed her life. He'd offered her enough money to breathe again, to sleep without nightmares about debt collectors and eviction and choosing between food and medicine. All she had to do was step into his world, a world of violence and secrets and danger that had somehow produced a little boy who remembered his mother's lullabies. Emma's shift ended at 11. She walked home through streets that felt more menacing than usual, jumped at every shadow, clutched the card in her pocket like a talisman. Her apartment building was dark. The landlord had cut costs by removing half the hallway bulbs. She climbed 3 flights of stairs, unlocked 4 different locks on her door, and stepped into the tiny space that was supposed to be her home. The eviction notice mocked her from the kitchen counter. Final warning: 3 days to pay or get out. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Miss Richardson." A male voice, gravelly and somehow familiar. "My name is Vincent Romano. I work for Mr. Caruso." Emma's pulse jumped. "How did you get my number?" "Mr. Caruso is a man of considerable resources." A pause. "He wanted me to clarify his offer. 50,000 a month plus benefits, health insurance, dental, a suite in his home that's bigger than most people's houses, your student loans paid off, your father's medical debts cleared." Emma's knees buckled. She sat down hard on her second-hand couch. "How do you know about my father's debts?" "Like I said, considerable resources." Vincent's voice softened. "Look, I get it. You're scared. Lorenzo Caruso is a scary man, but his son is dying inside, and you're the first person who's been able to reach him. Doesn't that mean something?" "It means I sang a song," Emma said, but her voice cracked. "It doesn't mean I'm qualified to raise a child in that world." "What world do you think you're living in, Miss Richardson?" Vincent's question was gentle but pointed. "You work 3 jobs to stay in an apartment that should be condemned. You haven't eaten a full meal in how long? 2 weeks? 3? The loan sharks your father borrowed from, they know where you live. How long before they escalate their collection methods?" Emma's blood ran cold. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm protecting you. If you take this job, those men disappear. Your debts disappear. Your father's memory gets honored with a gravestone that doesn't say temporary marker on it." Vincent sighed. "Lorenzo doesn't beg. He doesn't ask twice. But his son needs you. So I'm begging. Give the kid a chance. Give yourself a chance." The line went dead. Emma sat in the darkness of her apartment, Lorenzo's card in one hand, her phone in the other. Through the thin walls, she could hear her neighbor's TV, another neighbor's fight, a baby crying somewhere above her. She thought about Matteo's blue eyes, about the way he'd stopped screaming when she sang, about Lorenzo's face, that terrible combination of hope and despair. She thought about her father, who'd worked himself to death trying to provide for her after her mother died, who'd told her with his last breath, "Find something worth fighting for, baby girl. Don't just survive. Live." Emma looked at the eviction notice, at the empty refrigerator, at the life she'd been barely clinging to since the day they'd lowered her father into the ground, and then she looked at the card in her hand, 24 hours to decide. But deep down, in a place that terrified her, Emma knew she'd already made her choice. She just had to be brave enough to walk through the door. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that door led to a world where love and violence danced together, where a man like Lorenzo Caruso could be both her salvation and her destruction, where one decision would change everything. Emma picked up her phone and typed a message to the number on the card. "I'll do it. When do I start?" The response came in less than 10 seconds. "Car will pick you up tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pack everything you need. You're coming home." Emma stared at the word home until her vision blurred. She'd lost her home when her mother died, lost it again when her father followed. Was it possible to find it in the last place she'd ever think to look? in the arms of a monster who needed someone to teach him how to be human again. The black Mercedes pulled up exactly at 8 a.m. Emma stood on the curb with 2 suitcases that contained everything she owned, which wasn't much. Clothes that had seen better days, a few photos of her parents, her mother's recipe box, her father's watch. The building super had already been by to collect her keys, though she suspected Lorenzo's people had paid him off before she'd even agreed to leave. The driver stepped out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that had seen too much. The same man who'd been standing closest to Lorenzo last night. "Miss Richardson, I'm Vincent Romano." So this was the voice from the phone. Emma shook his offered hand, surprised by the gentleness of his grip. "Mr. Romano." "Vincent, please. Mr. Romano was my father, and he was an asshole." He smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to almost kind. "May I?" He gestured to her suitcases. Emma nodded, watching as he loaded them into the trunk with an efficiency that spoke of military training, or something darker. The interior of the Mercedes smelled like leather and money. Emma had never been in a car this nice. She ran her fingers over the seat soft as butter and tried not to think about what she'd just done, what she'd just agreed to. "Nervous?" Vincent asked as they pulled into traffic. "Terrified." He laughed, a sound like rolling thunder. "Good, that means you're smart. Lorenzo would be disappointed if you weren't scared. That's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to prepare you." Vincent's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "The Caruso estate isn't like anything you've experienced, Emma. May I call you Emma?" "Yes, and what should I expect?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment, navigating through Chicago's morning traffic with practiced ease. They were heading north, toward the suburbs where the houses had gates and the lawns had names. "Lorenzo isn't a good man," Vincent finally said. "I won't lie to you about that. He's done things that would keep you awake at night. He's made choices that have ended lives, destroyed families, broken people who crossed him." He paused. "But he's also the man who held his wife's hand for 36 hours straight while she died, who hasn't slept through the night since, who looks at his son and sees every mistake he's ever made reflected back at him." Emma's throat tightened. "You've known him a long time. Since we were kids, his father and mine did business together. Giovanni Caruso, Lorenzo's father, he's old school. Believes in blood oaths and family honor and all that medieval bullshit. He groomed Lorenzo from birth to take over the family business." Vincent's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Lorenzo never wanted this life. But wanting something different doesn't mean you get to escape. He could have walked away. Could he? Vincent's eyes were sad in the mirror. When you're born into certain families, Emma, walking away means everyone you love dies. Lorenzo made his choice a long time ago. He became what his father needed him to be. And then he met Sofia. The name hung in the air like a ghost. "Matteo's mother," Emma said softly. "Sofia Marchesi, daughter of one of our allied families. She was supposed to be an arranged marriage, a business transaction. Lorenzo was 28, she was 23. Nobody expected them to actually fall in love." Vincent's voice grew distant, remembering. "But they did. God, they did. I'd never seen Lorenzo smile until Sofia. She made him remember he was human. She gave him hope that maybe he could have both, the family legacy and a real life." What happened to her? The question was barely a whisper, but Vincent heard it. Matteo's birth was complicated. Sofia was small, delicate. The doctors said she shouldn't have more children after him, but she wanted a big family. She got pregnant again 2 years later. Vincent's jaw clenched. There were complications early on. She was on bed rest, but Lorenzo was dealing with a situation, a rival family making moves on our territory. He left her with guards, with medical staff, thought she was safe. Emma's chest ached. She could see where this was going. She started bleeding. They rushed her to the hospital, but by the time Lorenzo got there, Vincent trailed off. He was too late, lost the baby, lost Sofia, and Matteo. He was old enough to understand his mama wasn't coming home. The kid just broke. stopped talking, stopped sleeping. Lorenzo tried everything, but nothing worked. How do you comfort your son when you can't even comfort yourself? The car turned through massive iron gates that swung open silently. Emma pressed her face to the window, her breath catching. The Caruso estate was enormous. 3 stories of white stone and glass, with wings spreading out on either side like a bird in flight. Manicured lawns stretched in every direction, dotted with mature trees and gardens that probably cost more to maintain than Emma's yearly salary. Fountains, statues, a garage that looked bigger than her old apartment building. And everywhere, men in dark suits with wires in their ears and guns at their hips. "Welcome to the fortress," Vincent said, but there was no humor in his voice. "The security you see is just the surface. Cameras everywhere, sensors on every window and door. Panic rooms, safe rooms, escape routes. Lorenzo doesn't take chances anymore. Not after Sofia." The car stopped in front of the main entrance. Emma's hands were shaking as she reached for the door handle. "Emma!" Vincent turned in his seat, his eyes serious. "One more thing. Lorenzo's office is on the 2nd floor, west wing. You'll know it by the double doors with the Caruso crest. Don't ever go in there without permission. Don't ask about his business. Don't talk to strangers who call the house. And if anyone tries to get you to leave the property without Lorenzo's explicit approval, you call me immediately." He handed her a phone, sleek, new, expensive. "My number's programmed in. So is Lorenzo's. So is the head of security, Marcus Kane. Any problems, any concerns, you call." Emma took the phone with numb fingers. "You make it sound like I'm in danger. You're in Lorenzo Caruso's home, caring for his only child." "Of course you're in danger." Vincent's expression softened. "But you're also probably safer here than you've ever been in your life. Lorenzo protects what's his, and as of right now, you're his." The words sent a shiver down Emma's spine that had nothing to do with fear. The front doors opened before they could knock. A small Asian woman in her 60s stood in the entrance, her face kind but her eyes sharp as knives. "Miss Richardson, I am Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper. Welcome to the Caruso home." Her English was perfect but accented. Emma bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. Please, call me Emma." Something flickered in Mrs. Chen's eyes. Approval, maybe. "Come, I will show you your rooms. Mr. Caruso is in meetings, but will meet with you this afternoon." Vincent disappeared with her suitcases while Mrs. Chen led Emma through a house that belonged in a magazine. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art that Emma was pretty sure should be in museums. Every surface gleamed, every detail perfect. But it felt empty, like a mausoleum, beautiful and cold and waiting for life to fill it again. They climbed a grand staircase, turned down a hallway lined with family portraits. Emma's steps slowed as she passed them. Lorenzo at various ages, a serious child, a brooding teenager, a young man with fire in his eyes, photos of an older couple that must be his parents. And then Emma stopped breathing. The portrait was life-sized, hung in a place of honor at the end of the hall. Sofia Caruso, radiant in a white dress, holding infant Matteo, her smile so bright it seemed to light the canvas from within, and she looked exactly like Emma. Same honey blonde hair, though Sofia's was longer, more elegant. Same green eyes, same delicate bone structure, same full lips. They could have been sisters. Twins, even. "You see it too, Mrs. Chen said quietly, appearing at Emma's elbow. "When I first saw you yesterday, Mr. Caruso sent photos, had me prepare your rooms. I thought perhaps he had lost his mind. That grief had made him seek a replacement." Emma couldn't tear her eyes from the portrait. "Am I a replacement?" "I do not know, but I will tell you this, Miss Emma." Mrs. Chen switched to Mandarin, testing. "Be careful with the heart of a broken man. Sometimes they wish to be healed. Sometimes they wish to break others so they are not alone in their pain." Emma responded in the same language, rusty but functional. "Which one is Lorenzo Caruso? That is what you must discover, for your sake and for the child's." Mrs. Chen switched back to English, her professional mask sliding into place. "Your rooms are here." She opened a door, and Emma stepped into a space that made her want to cry. It wasn't a room, it was a suite, bigger than her entire apartment had been. A bedroom with a 4-poster bed dressed in silk, a sitting area with a fireplace and bookshelves and French doors that opened onto a private balcony, a bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in, and a shower that had more settings than her old car. And the closet. This must be a mistake, Emma breathed, staring at the rows of clothes hanging in perfect arrangement. Dresses, pants, blouses, shoes, even jewelry displayed on velvet stands. These aren't mine. They are now. Mr. Caruso had everything sent over yesterday. Your measurements, your style preferences, your sizes. He is very thorough. Emma felt violated and grateful in equal measure. How did he get my measurements? Mrs. Chen's lips twitched. Mr. Caruso is a man of considerable resources. The second time Emma had heard that phrase in 24 hours, it was starting to sound like a threat. Your suitcases will be brought up shortly. Lunch is at noon in the main dining room, though you may eat in your rooms if you prefer. Mateo's suite is next door. Mrs. Chen pointed to a connecting door. And Mr. Caruso's master suite is across the hall. Of course it was. Mr. Caruso would like to give you a tour at 2 p.m. Until then, please make yourself comfortable. Mrs. Chen moved toward the door, then paused. Miss Emma, one more thing, in Mandarin, for your ears only. Emma leaned in. The boss has a darkness in him that even his son has not reached. I have worked for this family for 30 years. I have seen Giovanni Caruso do terrible things. But Lorenzo, he is different, more controlled, but also more dangerous because of it. The darkness in him is held back by only the thinnest thread. Mrs. Chen's hand touched Emma's arm. That thread is his son. Do not let it break, because if it does, there will be no saving any of us. She left Emma standing in a closet full of designer clothes, her heart pounding, wondering what the hell she'd just walked into. Emma spent the next few hours exploring her suite, trying on a few pieces from the closet. Everything fit perfectly, which was both impressive and unsettling, and staring at the connecting door to Mateo's room. She could hear him occasionally, little sounds, footsteps. Once, a soft cry that made her hand reach for the doorknob before she stopped herself. She wasn't his mother. She was his nanny. There were boundaries. But God, that cry. At exactly 2 p.m., a knock sounded on her door. Emma opened it to find Lorenzo Caruso in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her father's funeral. His dark hair was perfect, his jaw freshly shaven, his eyes that same devastating combination of hard and haunted. Emma, you came. As if she'd had a choice. You were very persuasive, she said carefully. His lips twitched, almost a smile. Diplomatic. I appreciate that. Ready for the tour? Emma nodded, acutely aware of how close he was, how the hallway suddenly felt smaller with him in it. Lorenzo was the kind of man who consumed space, who made everything else fade into the background. They started with the first floor. He showed her the formal living room, never used, the library. You're welcome to any books. The music room. Sophia played piano, and the kitchen that could serve a restaurant. Mrs. Chen runs the household. If you need anything, ask her. If she can't provide it, she'll tell me. Lorenzo's hands were in his pockets, his posture relaxed, but Emma could see the tension in his shoulders. Staff rotation is on the bulletin board in the kitchen. Security team changes every 12 hours. You'll learn their faces quickly. Do I need to know the security team? Yes, because you don't leave this property without them, ever. The word was absolute, final. Emma bristled. I'm not a prisoner. No. You're someone I'm responsible for. Lorenzo's eyes met hers, and there was something fierce in them. The moment you walked into my world, Emma, you became a target. My enemies will use you to get to me if they can. I won't let that happen. Your enemies, Emma repeated. You mean other criminals. I mean other families, other men who want what I have, who would hurt what I care about to weaken me. Lorenzo moved closer, his voice dropping. I know what you think of me. I know what I am. But I will keep you safe. That's a promise. Emma's pulse jumped at his proximity. This close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her head spin. What if I don't want to be kept safe? What if I want to live my life? Then you shouldn't have taken my money. The words were harsh, but his tone was almost gentle. Regretful. Come, Lorenzo said, moving toward the stairs. I want to show you Matteo's wing. They climbed to the second floor, turned down a hallway painted in soft blues and creams. Lorenzo stopped in front of a door decorated with wooden letters spelling Matteo. This is his playroom. Bedroom is through there. Bathroom. His suite connects to yours. You saw the door. If he needs you at night, you'll hear him. Lorenzo opened the door, and Emma's heart broke. The room was a child's paradise. Toys everywhere, books lining the walls, a train set that took up half the floor, stuffed animals piled on shelves. But it felt unused, unloved, like a museum exhibit of what childhood should look like. And in the corner, sitting alone with a worn teddy bear, was Matteo. The little boy looked up as they entered. His blue eyes, so much like Sophia's in the portrait, locked on Emma's face. For a moment, no one moved. Then Matteo whispered, "The singing lady." Emma's eyes burned. She crouched down slowly, making herself small, non-threatening. "Hi, Matteo. My name is Emma. Do you remember me from last night?" The boy nodded, clutching his teddy bear tighter. "I'm going to be staying here for a while. Is that okay with you?" Another nod. Matteo looked at his father, then back at Emma. "You sing Mama's song?" "I do. Your mama had very good taste in music. Papa doesn't sing." Matteo's voice was so small, so lost. "Papa doesn't come in my room much." Emma glanced at Lorenzo. His face had gone completely blank, but she could see the pain radiating from him in waves. "Well," Emma said gently, "maybe we can change that. Would you like to show me your toys? I bet you have some really cool stuff." Matteo hesitated, then slowly stood. He walked toward Emma with cautious steps, stopping just out of reach. "You're not going to leave?" "Not unless you want me to." The others left. They all left. His little lip trembled. They said I was too much. Too loud, too sad. Emma felt Lorenzo flinch behind her. "Matteo," she said firmly, "I'm not going anywhere, I promise." Promises break. The boy's wisdom was too old for his years. Mama promised she'd come back. Emma made a decision. She sat down cross-legged on the floor, right there in the middle of the train set. "You're right. Promises do break sometimes. People leave even when they don't want to. Your mama didn't want to leave you, Matteo. She fought to stay. But sometimes, life is cruel. Sometimes we lose the people we love." Matteo crept closer, his bear dragging on the floor. "You lost someone. I lost my mama when I was 6, and I lost my papa last year, so I know what it feels like. I know how much it hurts." The little boy's eyes filled with tears. "Does it stop hurting?" "No," Emma said honestly, and she heard Lorenzo's sharp intake of breath. "It doesn't stop, but it gets different. The hurt becomes part of you, but so do the good memories. So does the love. Your mama loved you so much, Matteo. That love doesn't die just because she did." Matteo dropped his bear and climbed into Emma's lap. Just like that. No hesitation. He buried his face in her neck and cried, deep, shuddering sobs that shook his small body. Emma held him, rocked him, sang softly in his ear. She didn't look at Lorenzo, didn't dare, because she could feel him watching them, could sense the emotion rolling off him like thunder before a storm. When Matteo finally calmed, he pulled back and looked at Emma with swollen eyes. "Will you read me a story?" "I would love to." They settled on the couch together, Matteo choosing a book about a brave mouse. Emma read with different voices for each character, making Matteo giggle, an actual giggle, bright and pure and perfect. She'd been so focused on the child that she didn't notice Lorenzo leave, didn't see him walk to the doorway, his hand braced against the frame, his whole body trembling. Didn't see the single tear that tracked down his face before he roughly wiped it away. Vincent found him there 20 minutes later. "Boss, the Castellano situation." He stopped, seeing Lorenzo's face. "You okay?" She got him to laugh, Vincent. Lorenzo's voice was raw. He laughed. I haven't heard him laugh in 2 years. Vincent squeezed his shoulder. Maybe bringing her here was the right call. Or maybe I'm putting her in danger for selfish reasons. Maybe I'm using her to ease my own guilt. Lorenzo dragged a hand through his hair. She looks just like Sofia. I noticed. What if that's why Matteo responds to her? What if I'm just replacing his mother with a copy? Emma Richardson is not a copy of anyone. Vincent's voice was firm. She's her own person, and from what I've seen, she's got steel in her spine. She stood up to you in a restaurant full of your men. She's not afraid. She should be. Why? Because you might fall for her? Lorenzo's head snapped up. That's not... Please, I've known you for 25 years. I saw how you looked at her last night, how you're looking toward that room right now. Vincent lowered his voice. Sofia's death almost destroyed you, but you're still here, boss. You're still breathing. Maybe it's time to let yourself live again. I don't deserve... None of us deserve anything. We take what we can and try not to destroy it. Vincent checked his phone. The Castellanos are meeting tomorrow night. We need to show strength. Marcus wants to increase the rotation, add 2 more men to the detail. Do it. And Vincent, I want background on Emma's father's debts. Who he owed, how much, all of it. Already done. She wasn't lying. He was drowning. Medical bills from her mother's cancer, then his own heart condition. The loan sharks were circling, Sal Giordano's crew. Lorenzo's face hardened. Sal works for the Moretti family. Yeah, want me to send a message? I'll handle Sal personally. Emma's debts are cleared as of today. Anyone who comes near her answers to me. Vincent nodded and disappeared down the hall. Lorenzo stood frozen, caught between walking into his son's playroom and running in the opposite direction. Emma made the decision for him. She appeared in the doorway, Matteo asleep in her arms, his thumb in his mouth, his face peaceful. He passed out mid-story, she whispered. Where's his bed? Lorenzo led her through to the bedroom, watching as she laid Matteo down with practiced gentleness, tucking his bear beside him, brushing his hair back from his forehead. She turned to find Lorenzo inches away, his eyes dark and intense. Thank you, he said quietly, for being kind to him, for not lying about the pain. Kids know when you're lying. They can sense it. Emma hugged herself, suddenly aware of how intimate this moment was, the 2 of them standing over his sleeping son, the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows, the world outside forgotten. You're a natural with him. I like kids. They're honest, no hidden agendas. Unlike adults, Lorenzo said, and there was something knowing in his tone. Unlike your world, you mean? Emma met his gaze. I'm not stupid, Lorenzo. I know what you are, what you do. Do you? He moved closer, and Emma's breath caught. Do you know that I've killed men, that I'll kill again, that the money paying your salary is built on violence and fear? Yes. And you can live with that? Emma thought about her father, worked to death by a system that didn't care, about the loan sharks who'd circled her like vultures, about the way the world had chewed her up and spit her out before she was 25. I can live with it better than I can live with watching Matteo suffer, better than I can live with being crushed by debt and poverty and hopelessness. Her chin lifted. Judge me if you want, but we all make compromises to survive. Lorenzo stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face, made him look younger, almost boyish. I'm not judging you, Emma. I'm admiring you. The words hung between them, charged with something Emma didn't want to name. I should let you get back to work, she said, her voice breathier than she'd like. I should get back to work, Lorenzo agreed, but he didn't move. Neither did Emma. The moment stretched, both of them caught in an orbit neither understood. Then Matteo stirred in his sleep, mumbling for his mama, and the spell broke. Lorenzo stepped back, his professional mask sliding into place. Dinner is at 7. You can eat with Matteo in his room, or join me in the dining room. Your choice. I'll eat with Matteo tonight. He needs routine. Tomorrow, then. I'd like you to join me. We should discuss your duties, your schedule, the rules of the house. The rules, Emma repeated. Right. Lorenzo moved toward the door, then paused. Emma, one more thing. The clothes in your closet, they're yours. No strings attached. If you don't like them, Mrs. Chen can arrange for something else. I wanted you to be comfortable here. They're beautiful. Thank you. He nodded and left, leaving Emma standing in Matteo's room, her heart racing, her mind spinning. She'd been in Lorenzo Caruso's home for less than 6 hours, and already she could feel the walls of her carefully constructed life crumbling. Already she could feel herself being pulled into an orbit she wasn't sure she'd survive. But as she looked at Matteo sleeping peacefully for the first time in who knew how long, Emma realized she didn't care about survival anymore. She cared about saving this little boy, and maybe, just maybe, saving his father too, even if it destroyed her in the process. After that night, something shifted. Lorenzo started appearing at breakfast. He didn't talk much, but he was there, sitting at the head of the long dining table while Emma coaxed smiles from Matteo with silly voices and pancake shapes. She caught him almost smiling once, almost, but the walls around his heart were thick, built from grief and guilt and a lifetime of violence. Emma realized breaking through wouldn't be easy, but she'd never back down from a challenge. 2 weeks into her new life, Emma had established a routine with Matteo. Morning playtime in the garden where armed guards watched from a distance. Afternoon reading sessions where his vocabulary expanded daily. Evening music time where she taught him simple songs on the piano in the room that had once been Sophia's sanctuary. The change in Matteo was remarkable. He smiled now, laughed, asked questions about everything, but he still didn't call Lorenzo Papa to his face, still tensed when his father entered a room. The distance between them was a chasm Emma didn't know how to bridge, until the morning Matteo spoke his first full sentence in 2 years. They were building a tower with blocks when it happened. Emma was narrating a story about a brave knight when Matteo suddenly said clear as day, "Emma, will you be my new mama?" The block in Emma's hand clattered to the floor. She turned to find Lorenzo standing in the doorway, frozen. His face had gone white, his hands clenched at his sides. For a moment, no one breathed. "Matteo," Emma said gently, her heart breaking. "I can't replace your mama. No one can. She loved you so much. But she's gone." Matteo's lip trembled. "And Papa said you're staying. So can't you be my mama now?" Emma looked helplessly at Lorenzo. He stood there like a statue, clearly fighting some internal war. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. Emma heard a door slam somewhere in the house. "Did I make Papa mad?" Matteo's eyes filled with tears. "No, baby, you didn't make him mad. He misses your mama too. Sometimes grown-ups need time to feel their feelings." But Emma's hands were shaking as she pulled Matteo close. She'd seen the devastation on Lorenzo's face, the raw agony of a man being confronted with his failures as a father. She found him an hour later in his study, despite Mrs. Chen's warnings about never entering without permission. The door was unlocked. Lorenzo sat at his massive desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand even though it was only 10 a.m. "You shouldn't be here," he said without looking up. "Probably not." Emma closed the door behind her. "But I am." "Did you tell him to call you Mama? Did you encourage that?" The accusation stung. "Of course not. Lorenzo, he's 3 years old and grieving. He's looking for stability, for someone to fill the hole Sophia left. That's normal. Normal." Lorenzo laughed bitterly, finally meeting her eyes. His were bloodshot, haunted. "Nothing about this is normal, Emma. My son asking the nanny to replace his dead mother. Me hiring a woman who looks exactly like my wife because I'm too broken to function. This whole situation is fucked." Emma moved closer, her anger rising. "You want to know what's fucked? A little boy who lost his mother and then lost his father too because you're so consumed by guilt, you can't even be in the same room with him. You want to know what's really messed up? That child loves you desperately, and you're too afraid to love him back. Lorenzo's glass hit the desk hard. I'm not afraid. Yes, you are. Emma's voice cracked. You're terrified, because loving him means risking loss again, means being vulnerable, means potentially failing him the way you think you failed Sophia. I did fail Sophia. Lorenzo stood abruptly, and Emma saw his hands were shaking. I wasn't there when she needed me. I chose business over my wife, and she died because of it. How am I supposed to live with that? How am I supposed to look at my son and not see everything I destroyed? By showing up, Emma said quietly. By being present. By letting yourself feel something other than guilt. You don't understand? Then help me understand. Lorenzo stared at her for a long moment. Then, to Emma's shock, his face crumpled. The mask he wore so carefully shattered, and she saw the man underneath, broken, grieving, drowning in regret. I wasn't there, he whispered. The Castellanos ambushed one of our warehouses. 3 of my men died. I was coordinating the response, and Sophia was calling me. She called 12 times. Emma, 12. And I didn't answer because I was too busy playing king of the underworld. His voice broke. When I finally got to the hospital, she was already gone. They said if I'd gotten there an hour earlier, maybe they could have saved her. Maybe. But I was too late. I'm always too fucking late. Emma's eyes burned with tears. She moved around the desk, and before she could second-guess herself, wrapped her arms around Lorenzo Caruso. He stiffened. For 3 heartbeats, he didn't move. Then his arms came around her, and he buried his face in her hair, and his whole body shook with silent sobs. Emma held him, this dangerous man who'd killed without hesitation, but couldn't forgive himself for one moment of human error. She felt his tears soak into her shirt, felt the years of grief and guilt pouring out of him. You're not too late now. She whispered against his shoulder. Matteo needs you. Not the version of you that's perfect and never makes mistakes. He needs his father. Flawed, broken, real. Lorenzo pulled back, his hands on her shoulders, his face inches from hers. What if I destroy him too? What if I'm too damaged to be what he needs? Then you let me help you. We do this together. Something shifted in Lorenzo's eyes, something heated and intense that made Emma's breath catch. Emma, he said, his voice rough, you're dangerous. Why? Because you make me want things I have no right to want. His thumb brushed her cheek, and Emma's heart hammered. They were too close. This was too intimate. She should step back, reestablish boundaries, remember she was the nanny and he was her employer, and this could never. Matteo's scream shattered the moment. They both ran. Emma reached his playroom first to find Matteo thrashing on the floor, caught in the grip of a nightmare even though it was mid-morning. His eyes were open but unseeing, his little body rigid with terror. Night terrors, Emma said, recognizing the signs. Don't touch him yet. It can make it worse. But Lorenzo was already on his knees beside his son. Matteo, Matteo, wake up. Papa's here. The little boy's screams intensified. Lorenzo looked at Emma helplessly. Sing, she said. Sing the lullaby. He needs to hear your voice. I can't. I don't remember. Stellina, Emma prompted. Come on, Lorenzo. For him. Lorenzo's voice cracked on the first word, but he sang, haltingly at first, then stronger. Stellina, la notte si avvicina. Matteo's screams faded to whimpers. His eyes focused, finding his father's face. Papa? His voice was so small. I'm here, son. Papa's here. Lorenzo gathered Matteo into his arms, and this time he didn't let go. He held his son like he was the most precious thing in the world, rocking him, still singing that lullaby through tears. Emma watched Matteo's small hand grip Lorenzo's shirt, watched the little boy burrow into his father's chest, watched 2 years of distance begin to crumble. Don't go, Matteo whispered against Lorenzo's neck. I'm not going anywhere, I promise. Mama promised too. Lorenzo's face twisted with pain, but he didn't pull away. I know, baby. I know she did. And she didn't want to break that promise. But Papa's not going anywhere. You're stuck with me. And Emma, Lorenzo's eyes met hers over Matteo's head. And Emma. They stayed like that for an hour. Lorenzo holding Matteo, Emma sitting close, the three of them in a circle on the playroom floor. Eventually, Matteo fell asleep in his father's arms, exhausted from the terror and the tears. "I should put him down," Lorenzo whispered, but he didn't move. "Or we could just stay here a while longer." Lorenzo's free hand found Emma's. "Thank you." "For what?" "For pushing me. For not letting me hide. For—" He trailed off, his thumb rubbing circles on her palm. "For seeing past the monster. You're not a monster, Lorenzo. I've done monstrous things. Maybe. But monsters don't weep for their dead wives. They don't sing lullabies to their sons. They don't feel guilt or grief or love. Is that what you think I feel?" Lorenzo's eyes were intense on hers. "Love?" Emma's pulse jumped. "For Matteo, yes. And what about for you?" The question hung in the air between them, dangerous and thrilling and impossible to answer. The moment was shattered by Vincent's voice from the doorway. "Boss, we have a problem." Lorenzo's face transformed instantly. The vulnerable father disappeared, replaced by the Mafia boss. "What kind of problem?" "Someone leaked photos of Emma and Matteo in the garden. The Castellanos have them." Emma's blood ran cold. Lorenzo carefully transferred Matteo to her arms and stood, every line of his body radiating lethal intent. "When?" "This morning. Antonio Castellano sent a message. He wants to meet." "Fuck." Lorenzo's hand went to his hair, gripping tight. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." "What does it mean?" Emma asked, even though part of her already knew. Lorenzo looked at her and his eyes were full of apology and anger and fear. "It means they know you matter to us, to me, which makes you a target. I don't understand. What do they want?" "Leverage." Vincent's voice was grim. "Antonio's been testing Lorenzo's territory for months. Now he knows there's someone Lorenzo cares about protecting, someone he might make a mistake to save." "I won't let them touch you," Lorenzo said, his voice absolute. "Emma, you don't leave this property, not for anything. I'm doubling security, adding cameras, putting our best men on rotation. Lorenzo, maybe I should—" "No." The word was sharp. "You're not leaving. You're not going anywhere. I will handle this." "How?" Lorenzo's smile was cold and deadly. "By reminding Antonio Castellano why people fear the Caruso name." He stormed out, Vincent following. Emma sat alone in the playroom, Matteo sleeping peacefully in her arms, and tried to ignore the ice spreading through her veins. She'd known Lorenzo's world was dangerous, but knowing something intellectually and experiencing it viscerally were very different things. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She paced her suite, jumped at every sound, imagined threats in every shadow. At 2 a.m., she heard movement in the hallway. Before she could think better of it, Emma opened her door. Lorenzo stood there in the darkness, his hand raised as if about to knock. He wore only pajama pants, his chest bare, his hair disheveled. He looked exhausted and wired and dangerous. "I was coming to check on you," he said quietly. "I couldn't sleep." "Neither could I." His eyes searched her face. "Are you afraid?" "Yes." "Good. Fear keeps you careful." Lorenzo leaned against the doorframe. "I've been thinking about what you said, about being too afraid to love Matteo. You were right." "Lorenzo, let me finish." He stepped into her suite, closing the door behind him. "I've been so consumed by guilt over Sofia that I forgot Matteo lost his mother too. He needed his father, and I abandoned him because I was too broken to function. But today, holding him, singing to him, it felt like breathing again." Emma's heart clenched. "He needs you. So much. I know. And I'm going to do better. Be better. For him." Lorenzo moved closer, his voice dropping. "But Emma, I need you to understand something. Today, when Vincent said you were in danger, I felt the same terror I felt when Sofia died. Maybe worse, because this time I knew it was coming. This time I had a chance to prevent it." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you matter to me. More than you should. More than is safe or smart or appropriate." His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. I'm falling for you, Emma, and I don't know how to stop. Emma's breath caught. Lorenzo, we can't. I know. You work for me. You're here for Matteo. This is a terrible idea on every level. His forehead touched hers. But I need you to know. Before something happens, before we run out of time, you matter. You matter to me too, Emma whispered, the admission terrifying and freeing all at once. Lorenzo's mouth was inches from hers. Emma could feel his breath, his heat, the barely controlled hunger radiating from him. All she had to do was close the distance. Just one small movement and... But I can't offer you anything but danger, Lorenzo said, pulling back. I won't do that to you. I won't make you a target any more than you already are. What if I don't want safety? What if I want you? Emma, I'm not Sophia, Emma said firmly. I'm not fragile. I know what you are, what your world involves. And I'm still here, still choosing to stay. You're choosing Matteo. I'm choosing both of you. Lorenzo stared at her, something breaking in his eyes. You're going to destroy me, aren't you? Or save you? Isn't that what you said? He laughed, the sound broken and beautiful. I'm a dead man either way. Then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and hungry, and 2 years of loneliness crashing together. Emma's hands went to his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart, the heat of his skin. Lorenzo's fingers tangled in her hair, angling her head, deepening the kiss until Emma couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. That was a mistake, Lorenzo said. Probably. We should stop. We should. Neither moved. The air between them crackled with electricity, with want, with the beginning of something that could save them or destroy them both. Stay with me tonight, Lorenzo said. Just stay. I don't want to be alone. Emma knew it was dangerous, knew crossing this line would change everything. But she took his hand anyway and let him lead her across the hall to his suite. They lay together in his massive bed, not touching, staring at the ceiling in the darkness. Lorenzo's hand found hers between them. Tell me about your father, he said quietly. So Emma did. She told him about the man who'd worked 3 jobs to give her a good life after her mother died. About medical bills that crushed him. About watching him deteriorate while she was powerless to help. About the guilt of not being there when he died. Guilt is a poison, Lorenzo said. It eats you from the inside until there's nothing left. How do you survive it? You don't. You just learn to live with the hollow place it leaves behind. Lorenzo turned his head to look at her. Until someone comes along and reminds you that you're still capable of feeling something other than pain. Lorenzo. Shh, just sleep. Let me have this moment where you're safe and Matteo's safe and the world hasn't caught fire yet. Emma rolled onto her side, her hand still in his. What are you going to do about the Castellanos? Whatever I have to. But Emma, I need you to promise me something. If things go wrong, if I tell Vincent to get you out, you go. No arguments, no heroics. You take Matteo and you run. I'm not leaving you. Emma, no. We're in this together now. You don't get to push me away when things get dangerous. Lorenzo's jaw clenched. You're impossible. You're stubborn. I'm trying to protect you. Then protect us together. Stop trying to fight alone. Lorenzo pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. Emma fit against his chest like she'd been made for that space. She felt his lips press against her hair. You scare me, he whispered, more than any gun or knife or enemy ever has. Because losing you would break me in ways I can't come back from. Emma's eyes burned. Then don't lose me. Fight for us. For Matteo. For the family we're becoming. Is that what we are? A family? Getting there, if you're brave enough to let us be. Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. Then, I've killed men for less than what Antonio Castellano is threatening, but I won't let this turn into a war, not with you and Matteo at risk. What will you do? I'll meet with him, see what he wants. But Emma, If this goes sideways, if they come for you. His arms tightened. There's a panic room in the basement. Vincent knows. Mrs. Chen knows. You get Matteo and you hide. Promise me. I promise. But Emma's heart was ice, because she'd heard the truth in Lorenzo's voice. He was preparing for war, and in war, people died. She just prayed she wouldn't lose him before they had a chance to really begin. They fell asleep tangled together, two broken people finding comfort in shared warmth. When morning came, Emma woke to find Lorenzo already gone, his side of the bed cold. On his pillow was a note in bold handwriting, "Meeting Antonio at noon. Vincent is outside your door. Stay inside. I'll come back to you. I promise." Emma clutched the note to her chest as the sun rose over the Caruso estate, painting everything gold and red like a warning. In 12 hours, everything would change. She just didn't know how much. The house felt wrong with Lorenzo gone. Emma tried to focus on Matteo, building towers and reading stories, but her mind kept circling back to Lorenzo meeting Antonio Castellano. Every minute felt like an hour. "Where's Papa?" Matteo asked for the third time. "Work, sweetheart. He'll be back soon." Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, her face tight. "Miss Emma, you have a visitor. Giovanni Caruso." Emma's stomach dropped. Lorenzo's father, the man who'd built this empire and forced his son into it. Vincent materialized beside her. "I'm coming with you." Giovanni Caruso stood in the library, silver-haired and commanding, eyes that missed nothing. He had Lorenzo's bone structure but felt more dangerous, a tiger to Lorenzo's coiled snake. "Miss Richardson, finally we meet." His voice was silk over steel. "You've made quite an impression on my son. Mr. Caruso." "Giovanni, please. We're family now." He circled her slowly. "Tell me, what do you see when you look at Lorenzo? A monster? A king? A broken man?" Emma straightened her spine. "I see a man who loves his son, who's trying to be better than his grief allows." Pretty words, but do you understand what you've walked into? Giovanni's voice hardened. "My son hasn't looked at a woman since Sophia died. Then you appear, looking exactly like his dead wife, and suddenly he's alive again. That makes you either his healing or his poison." He poured whiskey, handed her a glass. "The Castellanos have been waiting for Lorenzo to show weakness. Antonio wants revenge for his brother's death. He knows about you, about your relationship with Matteo. Do you know what that means? That I'm a target. That you're leverage. Antonio will use you to control Lorenzo, make him choose between protecting you and protecting his empire." Giovanni's eyes bored into hers. "And Lorenzo will choose you, which will destroy everything he's built. So if you truly care for him, you'll leave. Before this meeting. Before Antonio uses you as a weapon." Emma set down her glass. "I'm not leaving." "Then you're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." Giovanni studied her. "My son has done terrible things. Can you truly love a man capable of such darkness? Can you love your son despite it?" For the first time, Giovanni looked human. "Every day I ask myself if I destroyed Lorenzo by forcing this life on him. But we don't get second chances in this world." Vincent's phone buzzed. His face went white. "Boss is at the meeting. Antonio brought twice as many men as agreed. It's going to get ugly." Emma's vision blurred. Giovanni's hand landed on her shoulder. "This is what it means to love a man like my son. Every goodbye might be the last." Emma ran to Matteo, holding him close while time crawled. At 12:15, Vincent appeared, his face grim, but not devastated. "He's alive. We need to talk." In her suite, Vincent closed the door. Antonio made his move. He wants Lorenzo to back off 3 territories, pay reparations, and hand over 2 lieutenants. But here's the twist. He has proof Sophia was poisoned. Isabella Moretti did it. She was obsessed with Lorenzo. Antonio married her 6 months ago, didn't know what she'd done. Now he's offering a trade. Lorenzo gets Isabella to punish, and in exchange, gives Antonio what he wants. Emma's blood ran cold. Lorenzo's been searching for Sophia's killer for 2 years. Yeah, but accepting means showing weakness. Other families would circle like sharks. Lorenzo has 24 hours to decide. Vincent's eyes were heavy, and Antonio made it clear. If Lorenzo refuses, you become a target. What would you do? Burn Antonio's world to ash? But Lorenzo has to think bigger picture. Vincent stood. He's in his office. But Emma, be prepared. The man who came back isn't the same one who left. Lorenzo stood at his office window, tie loosened, a fresh cut above his eyebrow. His eyes were hollow when he turned. You shouldn't be here. Vincent told me everything. Then you know I'm fucked either way. Take the deal, I look weak. Refuse it, and Antonio comes after you and Matteo. Lorenzo laughed bitterly. I'm going to war, Emma. I'm going to find Isabella and make her pay, then destroy Antonio piece by piece. It's going to be bloody and brutal. Emma grabbed his face. I already know what you are. A man protecting the people he loves. I'm not going anywhere. Lorenzo kissed her, desperate and rough. I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me because everyone I love ends up hurt. Then we'll be terrified together. His phone buzzed. Vincent found something. Isabella's been feeding Antonio information for months. She's the leak, and she's planning something involving you and Matteo. What kind of something? Vincent's still digging. Emma, I need you and Matteo somewhere safe. No, we fight together or not at all. Footsteps pounded in the hallway. Vincent burst in, face white. Boss, Isabella Moretti just showed up at the gate with Antonio. They want to talk to Emma, and they're not leaving until they get her. Lorenzo's hand went to his gun. How many men? 10, plus Antonio's guard. Over my dead body, Lorenzo said quietly. That can be arranged, a woman's voice said from the doorway. Isabella Moretti stood there, gun in hand, stunning, dark hair, pale skin, red lips curved in poison. Hello, Lorenzo. Miss me? Lorenzo moved in front of Emma. Get out. I don't think so. Antonio may think he's controlling this, but he's just a pawn. I married him to get close to you again. I've been starting this war, maneuvering all the pieces, all so you'd come back to me. You killed Sophia. I did. Made her suffer for stealing what was mine. You were supposed to be mine, Lorenzo. Lorenzo moved lightning fast, gun pressed under her chin. Say another word about Sophia and I'll paint the walls with your brain. Do it. Prove you're still the monster. Show your new pet what you really are. Antonio appeared with his guards. Mexican standoff. Lorenzo, let's talk. Your woman's life for my wife's. Emma doesn't leave my sight. Then we have a problem, because Isabella's the only one who knows where I've planted my men. Kill her and you fight blind. I'll take my chances. Even with your son as collateral? Antonio showed his phone. A photo. Lorenzo's face drained of color. That's not possible. We have someone inside. Right now they're watching Matteo. One word from me and your son disappears. Antonio pocketed his phone. Here's the deal. Give me Emma for 48 hours, just insurance, and I give you Isabella plus the name of your leak. Then we negotiate. If you touch my son, I won't. Not if you cooperate. But I will win this, Lorenzo. The only question is how many people die. Lorenzo released Isabella. His eyes met Emma's, filled with agony. Don't, she whispered. Don't you dare trade me. You have 24 hours, Antonio said pleasantly. Think carefully. What matters more, your pride or your family? They left. Vincent secured the door, already coordinating security. Lorenzo sank into his chair, shoulders shaking. I can't choose. I can't. Emma knelt before him. Then don't. We find another way. There is no other way. If I fight, Matteo gets hurt. If I trade you, you get hurt. Everyone I love is at risk. Vincent appeared. Boss, I found the leak. Marcus Kane, head of security. Been feeding Isabella information for 6 months. Lorenzo's hands clenched. Where is he? Secured in the basement. Lorenzo stood, transforming. The vulnerable man disappeared. The boss emerged, cold, lethal, absolute. Triple Matteo's guard. Emma stays in the panic room. Get my father here. Tell him it's time. He turned to Vincent. And Marcus can wait. Fear is its own punishment. I'll deal with him when I'm done planning Antonio's funeral. He walked out, leaving Emma's heart hammering. She'd wanted to see the boss everyone feared. Now she had. And God help her, it was just as compelling as the broken man she'd fallen for. The war had begun, and Emma was standing at ground zero. 48 hours. Emma stared at the clock in the panic room as if she could stop time by force of will. The space was comfortable, plush furniture, stocked kitchen, even toys for Matteo, but it felt like a cage. Matteo played with his blocks, oblivious to the danger swirling above them, while Emma's mind raced. Lorenzo had been gone for 6 hours. No word, no updates. Just Vincent stationed outside the reinforced door, his face grim every time she checked. "Emma, look." Matteo held up his tower. "It's taller than me." "That's amazing, sweetheart." Emma pulled him close, breathing in his innocent scent. If anything happened to this child because of her. The door opened. Vincent entered, and Emma's heart stopped at his expression. "Boss wants to see you, alone. Mrs. Chen will stay with Matteo." "Is he?" "He's fine." "But Emma, he's made a decision, and you're not going to like it." Mrs. Chen appeared, her face kind but sad. Emma kissed Matteo's head and followed Vincent through corridors lined with armed men. The house had transformed into a fortress, guns everywhere, faces she didn't recognize, an energy that screamed impending violence. Lorenzo's office was filled with people. Giovanni sat in a leather chair, his face carved from stone. 3 men Emma didn't know stood by the window, lieutenants judging by their expensive suits and cold eyes. And Lorenzo stood behind his desk, looking like a king preparing for war. He'd changed clothes. Dark suit, dark shirt, no tie. His hair was perfect, his face clean-shaven, but his eyes, God, his eyes were empty. "Emma." He didn't smile. "Thank you for coming." The formality in his voice was a knife to her chest. "What's going on?" "I'm ending this. Tonight." Lorenzo's voice was flat, emotionless. "Antonio wants a trade. He's going to get one, just not the one he expects." "Lorenzo, let me finish." He moved around the desk, but didn't touch her, didn't come close. "I'm going to give Antonio what he wants. Territory, reparations, even the 2 lieutenants. But in exchange, I want Isabella alive and the name of every person who helped her. Then I'm going to make an example that ensures no one ever threatens my family again." Emma's blood ran cold. "What kind of example?" "The kind that involves a lot of blood and very clear messages." Lorenzo's jaw clenched. "But to do this, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "Of course, but..." "Then here's what's going to happen. In 2 hours, you're going to leave this house with Vincent. You'll go to a location Antonio has chosen. You'll stay there for 24 hours while I handle Isabella and close the deal." Emma's world tilted. "You're actually trading me?" "I'm using you as bait." Lorenzo finally met her eyes, and she saw the pain he was trying to hide. "Antonio thinks he's winning. He thinks he's getting leverage. But Vincent will be with you the entire time, along with a team I trust with my life. You'll be wired, tracked, protected. And the moment Antonio gives me what I want, we extract you. And if something goes wrong, it won't. Lorenzo, it won't, because I will burn the entire city down before I let anyone hurt you." His voice cracked slightly, the only sign of emotion. "But I need you to do this, Emma. For Matteo. For us. This is the only way to end this without a war that kills dozens of people." Giovanni spoke from his chair. "The girl has a right to refuse, Lorenzo. This plan is dangerous." "I know it's dangerous. Everything about this life is dangerous." Lorenzo's hands clenched. "But it's the best option we have. Antonio wants to feel like he's won. We give him that feeling long enough to extract what we need. Then we take everything from him." One of the lieutenants, a man with a scar down his cheek, stepped forward. "Boss, if I may, Miss Richardson isn't trained for this. If she panics, if she gives something away, she won't." Lorenzo's voice was absolute. "Emma is stronger than any of you realize." Emma's mind raced. Every instinct screamed to refuse, to run, to hide. But she looked at Lorenzo's face and saw the truth. He was barely holding it together. This plan terrified him, but he believed it was the only way. "What about Matteo?" she asked quietly. "He stays here with Giovanni and 20 men I'd die for. No one gets near him. I promise you that. And what will you be doing while I'm playing bait?" Lorenzo's smile was terrifying. "Visiting Isabella. Having a very long conversation about what happens to people who poison my wife and threaten my son. Then making sure Antonio understands that betraying me is a death sentence." Emma studied his face. The hard lines, the cold determination, the barely leashed violence. This was the monster everyone whispered about. The boss who'd built an empire on fear, and she trusted him completely. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." Relief flooded Lorenzo's face for just a moment before the mask returned. "Thank you. But I have conditions." His eyebrow raised. "Conditions?" "Vincent stays with me every second. I get a weapon, and don't tell me I don't know how to use one. You're going to teach me. And when this is over, you come get me yourself. Not Vincent, not your men. You." Lorenzo moved closer, finally, his hand cupping her face. "Deal. But Emma, if anything goes wrong, if you feel threatened in any way, there's a panic word. Say, Matteo needs me, and Vincent will extract you immediately. Consequences be damned. What about the plan?" "Fuck the plan. Your safety matters more than any deal." His forehead touched hers. "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I brought you into this world, that I've put you in danger, that I'm asking you to do this. I'm not." Emma's hands covered his. "I chose this. I chose you. I chose Matteo. And I'll do whatever it takes to keep us safe." Lorenzo kissed her then, deep and desperate, like he was memorizing the taste of her. When they broke apart, he pressed something into her hand. A small pistol, compact and deadly. "Vincent will teach you the basics. It's already loaded. Safety's here. Point and shoot if you have to." "Lorenzo, I don't know if I can actually—" "You can. If it's your life or theirs, you choose your life. Every time. Promise me." Emma nodded, even though her hands were shaking around the gun. The next 2 hours were a crash course in survival. Vincent taught her how to hold the weapon, how to aim, how to breathe through the fear. Giovanni pulled her aside and gave her advice in rapid Italian, how to read people, how to stay calm, how to survive in a world that wanted to break her. And Lorenzo stayed close, hovering, his control fracturing every time she met his eyes. Finally, it was time. Emma changed into clothes that looked expensive but hid the wire taped to her ribs and the tracker sewn into her sleeve. She checked on Matteo one last time, holding him tight while he asked why she had to go. "Just for one night, baby. Emma has to help your papa with something important. You're coming back, right?" His blue eyes were too knowing, too afraid. "I promise. Nothing could keep me away from you." Matteo hugged her fiercely. "I love you, Emma." Her eyes burned. "I love you too, sweetheart. So much." Lorenzo was waiting in the foyer, surrounded by his men. He looked like a king preparing to conquer kingdoms. Powerful, deadly, absolute. But when Emma approached, something in his face softened. "Ready?" "No. But let's do it anyway." He pulled her aside, away from watching eyes, his hands framing her face. "Listen to me. Vincent will keep you safe. I will come for you. And when this is over, when Antonio and Isabella are dealt with, we're going to build a life where you never have to be afraid again." "Lorenzo, I love you." The words came out rough, unpracticed, like they were being torn from his chest. "I know it's too soon. I know this is the worst possible time, but I need you to know. I love you, Emma Richardson, and I will move heaven and earth to bring you home." Emma's tears spilled over. "I love you too. So come get me. Don't you dare die doing something heroic and stupid." He laughed, the sound broken. "Wouldn't dream of it." One more kiss, this one soft, tender, a promise. Then Vincent was there, car waiting, time running out. Emma climbed into the back seat. Lorenzo stood in the doorway of his fortress, backlit like a dark angel, watching until they disappeared through the gates. "He's going to lose his mind worrying about you," Vincent said, eyes on the road. "Will he really be okay, going after Isabella alone?" "He's not alone. Giovanni's with him, plus our best interrogators. Isabella will tell him everything before the night's done." Vincent's voice was grim. "But yeah, he'll be okay." Lorenzo survived worse than a psychotic woman with a vendetta. They drove for 30 minutes, the city lights giving way to industrial warehouses and shipping containers. Vincent pulled up to a building that looked abandoned, but Emma could see guards positioned on the roof. Antonio's choice of location, neutral ground supposedly. Vincent checked his gun. "Remember, you're scared but compliant. Don't antagonize anyone. Don't try to escape. Just wait for my signal." "What's the signal?" "You'll know it when you see it." Vincent's hand squeezed her shoulder. "You're brave, Emma. Braver than most soldiers I've known. Lorenzo's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have him too, even if his world is insane. Especially because his world is insane. Anyone can love someone when it's easy. Takes real strength to love a man like Lorenzo." They exited the car. Emma's legs were jelly, but she forced them to move. The warehouse door opened, and Antonio Castellano stood there, smiling like they were old friends. "Miss Richardson, so glad you could join us. Please come in. Let's make you comfortable." Emma stepped inside, Vincent at her back, and prayed Lorenzo knew what he was doing. Because if this plan went wrong, people were going to die, and she wasn't sure she'd be among the survivors. Meanwhile, across the city, Lorenzo stood in a concrete room that smelled like blood and fear. Isabella Moretti was chained to a chair, her designer clothes torn, her perfect hair matted. She'd been screaming for an hour. Now she just whimpered. Giovanni stood in the corner, arms crossed, face impassive. He'd seen this before. Hell, he'd done worse. "I'll ask one more time," Lorenzo said calmly, wiping blood from his knuckles. "Who helped you poison Sofia? Who else was involved?" "Go to hell," Isabella spat, blood on her teeth. Lorenzo smiled, cold and terrible. "Already there? But I'm taking you with me." He picked up a pair of pliers. Isabella's screams echoed through the warehouse, and Lorenzo felt nothing. The warehouse was cold. Emma sat in a metal chair, hands unbound, but watched by 4 armed men. Antonio had been nothing but polite, offering her water, a blanket, even apologizing for the inconvenience. But his eyes were calculating, always watching, waiting for her to reveal something useful. Vincent stood against the wall, his posture relaxed but his eyes tracking every movement. He'd positioned himself between Emma and the door, strategic, protective. "I must say," Antonio said, pouring himself wine from a bottle that probably cost more than Emma's old car. "Lorenzo surprised me. I didn't think he'd actually trade you. The man I knew 2 years ago would have burned the city down first." "Maybe he's changed," Emma said carefully. "Or maybe you matter less than his empire." Antonio's smile was gentle, almost sympathetic. "Don't take it personally, Miss Richardson. In our world, love is always secondary to power. Sofia learned that the hard way." Emma's hands clenched. "You didn't know Sofia. I knew her better than you think. She was kind, gentle, completely unprepared for the violence of Lorenzo's world. It destroyed her long before Isabella's poison finished the job." Antonio leaned forward. "You look like her, but are you like her? Will you break the same way?" "I'm still here, aren't I?" Antonio laughed, genuinely delighted. "You are. Perhaps Lorenzo chose better this time." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his smile faded. "Interesting. It seems your lover is currently torturing my wife. How romantic." Emma's stomach turned, but she kept her face neutral. "Isabella killed Sofia. She deserves whatever she gets." "Perhaps. But torture is such a messy business. It changes people. The man who walks out of that room won't be the same one who kissed you goodbye." Antonio studied her face. "Can you love him after? When his hands are covered in blood and his eyes are empty? Can you sleep beside a monster?" "Lorenzo isn't a monster. Keep telling yourself that. Maybe you'll believe it when he comes back with pieces of my wife under his fingernails." Vincent's jaw clenched, but he remained silent. Emma felt the wire against her ribs, knew Lorenzo could hear every word. She wondered what he was thinking, what he was feeling, if he could feel anything at all while doing what needed to be done. Hours crawled by. Antonio received periodic updates on his phone, his face growing darker with each one. Emma realized with cold certainty that things weren't going according to his plan. Lorenzo was winning. "Your boss is more ruthless than I gave him credit for," Antonio finally said, his polite mask slipping. "Isabella's given him everything. Names, locations, bank accounts. She's singing like a canary while he pulls out her teeth." Emma felt sick but refused to show it. "You threatened his son. What did you expect?" "Fair point." Antonio stood, pacing now, his control fracturing. "But here's what I don't understand, Miss Richardson. Lorenzo could have avoided all of this. He could have given me what I wanted 2 years ago. Territory, respect, acknowledgement that I deserved compensation for my brother's death. But his pride wouldn't allow it. His need to be the strongest, the most feared, it cost him his wife. And now it might cost him you. Or it might cost you everything," Emma said quietly. Antonio's eyes narrowed. "Brave words for someone in my custody. I'm not in your custody. I'm exactly where Lorenzo wants me to be." The realization hit Antonio a split second before the lights went out. Chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded from multiple directions: the roof, the windows, the door. Vincent moved like lightning, grabbing Emma and pulling her behind a concrete pillar. She felt him press a gun into her hands. "Stay down. Don't shoot unless you have to." Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness, his own weapon barking as muzzle flashes lit the warehouse like strobes. Emma's heart hammered. She clutched the gun Lorenzo had given her, her finger on the trigger, safety off. Men were screaming. Bodies were falling. The organized meeting had become a slaughter. Through the smoke and chaos, Emma saw Antonio running toward a back exit. Without thinking, she aimed and fired. The recoil shocked her. Her shot went wide, but it was enough to make Antonio stumble. A second later, someone else's bullet found him. His leg, blood blooming across expensive pants. He went down cursing. Then the warehouse doors burst open, and Lorenzo walked in like an avenging angel. He was covered in blood, his shirt, his hands, his face. But his eyes were clear, focused, scanning the room until they found Emma. For one heartbeat, the world stopped. Then he was moving, cutting through the chaos, his gun firing with precise efficiency. Emma watched him kill 3 men in as many seconds. Watched him move with a grace that was beautiful and terrible. This was the monster Antonio had warned her about, the king who ruled through fear. And God help her, she'd never loved him more. Lorenzo reached her, hauling her up, his hands checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did anyone touch you?" "I'm fine. I'm okay." Emma's hands were shaking. "Lorenzo, I shot it. I know, I heard everything." He pulled her close, his face buried in her hair. "You're safe. That's all that matters." Vincent appeared, dragging a wounded Antonio by the collar. "Boss?" "What do you want me to do with him?" Lorenzo looked at the man who'd threatened his family, and Emma saw murder in his eyes. Antonio saw it too, his face going pale. "Lorenzo, please. We can negotiate. I have money, connections, anything you want." "What I want," Lorenzo said softly, "is for you to understand what happens when you threaten what's mine." He raised his gun. Emma's hand covered his. "Lorenzo, wait." He looked at her, surprised. "Emma, if you kill him, his family will retaliate. More war, more death, more danger for Matteo." Emma's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "But if you let him live, broken, humiliated, powerless, he becomes an example. Mercy can be scarier than murder." Lorenzo stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he lowered his gun. "You're right." He looked at Antonio with cold contempt. "You live, but everything you have, territory, businesses, respect, it's mine now. You work for me. Your family answers to me. And if you ever threaten mine again, I won't be merciful twice." Antonio sagged in relief and humiliation. Vincent, get him to a hospital. Make sure his family understands the new arrangement. Lorenzo's arm wrapped around Emma. We're going home. The drive back was silent. Lorenzo held Emma's hand the entire time, his thumb rubbing circles on her palm. She could feel him trembling, the adrenaline crash, the fear catching up now that she was safe. What happened with Isabella? Emma finally asked. Lorenzo's jaw clenched. She told me everything, every person who helped her, every detail of how she poisoned Sophia. Then I made sure she'll never hurt anyone again. Did you kill her? No, but she'll wish I had. Lorenzo's voice was hollow. Antonio can have what's left of her. Let them destroy each other. Emma squeezed his hand. I meant what I said back there, about being merciful. You don't have to be the monster everyone expects. I am a monster, Emma. You saw what I'm capable of tonight. I saw a man protecting his family. There's a difference. Lorenzo pulled the car over abruptly, turning to face her. His eyes were wild, desperate. You should be terrified of me. You should run as far and fast as you can. Instead, you're here, holding my hand like I'm not covered in blood. Because I love you, Emma said simply. The whole you, the king and the father and the broken man trying to heal. I love all of it. Lorenzo's control shattered. He pulled her into his lap, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her neck. I thought I lost you. When Antonio had you, when the shooting started, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could see was losing you the same way I lost Sophia. But you didn't lose me. I'm here. We're both here. Emma's fingers threaded through his hair. And we're going home to Matteo. Together. Like a family. A family, Lorenzo repeated, like he was testing the word. Is that what we are? If you want to be. If you're brave enough. Lorenzo pulled back to look at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he smiled. A real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face. I want to be. God, I want that more than anything. They drove home as dawn broke over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The Caruso estate rose before them, and Emma saw Giovanni on the steps, Matteo in his arms. The moment Lorenzo stopped the car, Matteo was running, crying, Papa, Emma! Lorenzo caught his son, lifting him high, and Emma saw tears streaming down his face. Hey, buddy, I'm home. We're both home. You promised, Matteo said, his little hands clutching his father's shirt. You promised you'd come back. I'll always come back to you. Always. Lorenzo looked at Emma over Matteo's head. To both of you. Emma wrapped her arms around them, and for the first time in 2 years, Lorenzo's family was whole. 6 months later, Emma stood in the garden watching Matteo chase butterflies. Her hand rested on her growing belly. 16 weeks along with a girl Lorenzo swore would have her mother's fire. Arms wrapped around her from behind, Lorenzo's chin on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? How different life is now, how happy we are. Emma leaned back into his warmth. Do you ever regret it? Choosing this over the empire? After that night, Lorenzo had restructured everything. Giovanni had come out of retirement to handle day-to-day operations while Lorenzo stepped back. They'd gone legitimate, or as legitimate as a family like theirs could be. Businesses were clean. Violence was a last resort, and Lorenzo came home every night for dinner. Not for a second. His hands covered hers on her belly. I have everything I need right here. Matteo ran over, grass-stained and grinning. Mama, look what I found. The word still made Emma's heart skip. She'd never asked him to call her that, but one day it had just happened. Lorenzo had cried. What is it, baby? Matteo held up a caterpillar. Vincent says it's going to be a butterfly. Can we keep it? Of course we can. Emma kissed his head. We'll make it a special home. As Matteo ran off to find Vincent, Lorenzo turned Emma in his arms. Thank you. For what? For saving me. For loving me when I didn't deserve it. For giving me a reason to be better. His hand cupped her face. You walked into that restaurant 6 months ago and changed everything. You changed me too. Emma smiled. I was drowning, and you pulled me out. Gave me a family, a purpose, a love worth fighting for. Speaking of fighting, Lorenzo's expression turned serious. I got word from Antonio today. He wants to attend the wedding, as a gesture of respect. After everything, Emma and Lorenzo had decided to make it official. Small ceremony, close family only, in the garden where Matteo had first called Emma Mama. What do you think? I think he's been broken and obedient for 6 months. Maybe it's time to show mercy again. Lorenzo kissed her forehead. You've made me soft, Emma Richardson. Not soft, human. Same thing in my world. Good. The world needs more humans and fewer monsters. Giovanni appeared on the terrace, Matteo now riding on his shoulders. The old man had softened too, spending his days teaching his grandson Italian and spoiling him rotten. Lorenzo, he called, your son says he wants a pony. Please tell me you're not considering it. Why not? We have the space. Because he asked for a pony last week and a dragon the week before. He's playing you. Emma laughed, watching her strange, beautiful, dangerous family banter. This wasn't the life she'd imagined. But it was the life she'd fought for, chosen, built from ashes and fear and desperate love. That night, after Matteo was asleep, Lorenzo pulled Emma onto the terrace. The Chicago skyline glittered in the distance, beautiful and dangerous like everything else in their world. Do you ever think about that night? Lorenzo asked, in the restaurant, when you walked up to me despite every reason not to. All the time. I think about how scared I was, how desperate, how I had no idea what I was walking into. Would you do it again, knowing everything you know now? Emma turned in his arms, her hands on his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Because that night led to this. To us. To Matteo calling me Mama and this little girl growing inside me. To mornings watching you make pancakes and nights falling asleep in your arms. I'd walk into that restaurant 1,000 times if it meant ending up here. Lorenzo's eyes were suspiciously bright. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. He laughed, the sound free and easy in a way it never was before. Best trap I ever walked into. They stood together in the darkness, two broken people who'd found each other in the most unlikely place. Around them, the estate was quiet. Guards at their posts, family safe inside, the world held at bay by walls and guns and fierce love. Emma thought about her father, who'd told her to find something worth fighting for. She'd found it. In a dangerous man with gentle hands, in a grieving child who needed a mother, in a life she'd never expected but couldn't imagine living without. What are you thinking? Lorenzo murmured against her hair. That I love you. That I'm grateful. That Matteo needs a mom turned out to be the truest thing anyone ever said. Lorenzo pulled back to look at her, his eyes full of everything words couldn't capture. He needed a mom, I needed you. Turns out we were both dying until you walked through that door. Then I guess we saved each other. Yeah. Lorenzo kissed her, soft and sweet and perfect. I guess we did. Above them, stars wheeled in an endless sky. Inside, Matteo dreamed of butterflies and ponies and parents who loved him. And in the garden, where winter would soon give way to spring, life waited to bloom again. The Caruso family had been built on blood and fear and desperate circumstances, but it had been rebuilt on something stronger. Love that conquered guilt, mercy that healed wounds, and the courage to choose light even when surrounded by darkness. Emma Richardson had walked into Lorenzo Caruso's world as a waitress with nothing to lose. She was walking out as a wife, a mother, and the woman who'd reminded a monster that he was still human. And somewhere in heaven, Sophia smiled, knowing her son was finally home. Emma's journal entry, 1 year later. Dear Isabella, yes, we're naming you after the woman who tried to destroy us, taking back the name, making it mean love instead of poison. Your brother Matteo is 5 now and asks about you constantly. Your father builds you a crib with his own hands, the same hands that once only knew violence. Your grandfather Giovanni reads to my belly in Italian, teaching you the old songs before you're even born. This family was forged in fire, born from grief and danger and circumstances that should have destroyed us. But we survived. We thrived. We learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, doing the work, choosing each other even when it's hard. Your papa isn't a saint. He's done things I can't write about, things that would shock you. But he's also the man who sings you lullabies through my stomach at 3 a.m., who holds your brother through nightmares, who looks at me like I hung the moon. We'll tell you the truth someday, about how we met, about the darkness we walked through, about the price we paid for this peace. And we'll teach you what we learned, that the strongest thing in this world isn't power or money or fear. It's love that makes ruthless men gentle, love that turns strangers into family, love that makes you fight when you want to run. Your papa taught me that, and someday we'll teach you too. Welcome to the family, little one. It's messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. We can't wait to meet you. With all our love, Mama. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.